Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 20 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 21 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead, and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Jump City Mall. Raven worriedly looked down to the bomb lying beneath her with wide eyes. The time on the bomb was now at half a minute, the timer still counting down to what could very well be the end. What's actually pretty weird is I never thought I'd be done in by a bomb. Always thought my father would be the one to get me in the end. Raven thought to herself before shaking her head. She couldn't die yet, no matter how awful things might become, she couldn't let herself die. Looking around, Raven thought about her options for a moment. Nodding her head to herself, the violet-haired girl then shifted her weight to one side, moving slowly over before she then came back towards her side. Shifting her weight back to the side, Raven mentally growled as she moved and then lightly bumped into Batgirl. Gritting her teeth, she then shifted her weight once more, getting a fair distance away before ramming into Batgirl this time. Listening and hearing a groan, she watched as Batgirl slowly roused from unconsciousness with obvious discomfort. "Ugh, my head," she muttered, and Raven let out a few muffled noises, Batgirl slowly looking to her and then watching as Raven tilted her eyes to the Joker bomb. "Oh shit," Batgirl exclaimed before struggling with the vines that were holding her. "Damn it, the one time I leave my laser cutter at the Batcave," she grumbles to herself before unlocking the three long blades on her hidden gauntlets. The blades cut through the vine around her arms, and she quickly reaches out for the bomb. 20 seconds flashing on the timer as Raven widens her eyes. "Can't reach." Batgirl grunts out, and Raven tries to yell something, only getting out some muffled sounds out. 15 seconds left. Turning to Raven quickly, Batgirl gets what she is trying to say, and quickly reaches over to slice the vines from her arms. 10 seconds. Moving quickly, Raven frees her mouth from the vine, and then points a hand at the bomb. 5 seconds. "Azarath Metrians Inthos," she exclaims, black energy wrapping around the bomb, before the violet-haired girl quickly threw her hand up towards the sky. The bomb was sent flying up into the air, out of the hole caused by black fire, and went up in a massive explosion that rocked them all. Debris from the explosion, mostly just small grit and rocks knocked loose by it, rained on the three Titanas before it faded, leaving all of them safe and sound. Breathing out a quick sigh of relief, Raven then allowed her arms to go slack and hung limply, panting heavily. "Nice sinking," Batgirl then says while breathing a sigh of relief next to Raven, the violet-haired girl simply panting. "I think my entire life just flashed before my eyes," she muttered to herself with heaving breaths, and Batgirl nodded her head. "How was yours?" Batgirl questions, and Raven sighed. "Lousy till I met my friends, pretty good after I met Naruto," Raven confesses with a light blush, and Batgirl smiles lightly. "You?" Raven then asked, and Batgirl blinked for a bit and then shivered. "Besides that one time I almost got killed by a scarecrow, pretty good," she admitted, and Raven slowly nodded her head, while trying to steady her breathing. As she did, Batgirl finished cutting the vines around her ankles and dropped to the ground, grunting as she landed on her ass. "It's a good thing you had those blades on you," Raven notes while looking at the gloves out of the corner of one eye, and Batgirl nods her head with a strange look. "Batman forced me to wear them," she admits with a faraway look in her eyes. "He said you never know when you won't have something and need it, always be prepared," Batgirl admitted before sighing, rubbing the gauntlets lightly. Robin never listened, and when he tried the same with him, they got into a big argument. Batgirl then said with a shake of her head, Raven frowning slightly, and then looking at the blades with a more analytical expression. Physically, the weapons were sharp and deadly, however, they had uses besides as weapons. They were perfect for defending the wrists and forearms, both necessary to use the throwing weapons used by Batman and his clan. The blades were deployed by twisting the wrist, thus making them perfect for cutting through ropes or, as just seen, vines tied around the forearms. They were also very practical for a hero who had to cut free a lot of hostages, blockchains or pipes, among other weapons like Batman did with the common street thugs. They're actually pretty useful, Raven finally says, and Batgirl nods her head before scowling deeply. "Robin thought Batman wanted us all to have them because it would make us more uniformly equipped or something," Batgirl mutters to herself, and Raven frowned. What was it about Batman that brought these qualities in her letter out? As far as she knew, Robin was easy to sway into using what was useful, effective, and practical in combat. He'd even adapted 2 of his bird earrings into a sword for such a purpose, though admittedly it was more because of Naruto and his sword than anything else. Then again, Batman's main weapons and equipment, that she knew of at least, were all pretty much as standard for most Gotham heroes she knew of. Those being a utility belt, grapples, throwing weapons, bola, nets, zip lines, explosive weaponry, freezing pellets, armored costumes, versatile capes, and modified masks with vision settings. However, looking at it from Robin's view and Batman's are two different things. Raven then silently mused to herself. From Batman's view, it was to use what was most useful, and to always have something extra just in case. But in his attempts to escape Batman's shadow, Robin had made errors in his own choices of weaponry. He had a stronger than titanium cape that was very flexible for one, and was used for defense due to its short length, but Batman's was used as a weapon from what she'd heard from Naruto, as well as a glider. The Dark Knight also used a wide array of ever-expanding gadgetry, but Robin stuck to his older, more custom weaponry. Bird earrings, foldable sword, his collapsible bow staff, exploding discs, freezing discs, smoke pellets, and gas bombs. All in all, Robin was so caught up with becoming his own person, he was losing sight of the lessons from Batman. The lessons that made him a hero in the first place and the lessons that had kept him alive this long. Shaking her head, Raven suddenly frowned and looked over to a distant Batgirl, wondering if she had the same thoughts. "Well, could you get me down now? The blood is kind of rushing to my head." Raven asks, then mutters and Batgirl nods, then slowly gets up and helps her down, cutting the vines with her scalped blades. Landing on the ground with a light thud, Raven grumbling under her breath before looking up to Batgirl as she helped her to her feet. "So do we get Starfire down or wake her up first?" Batgirl asks and Raven frowns in thought once more. Waking Starfire up would lead to explanations about how they lost, and then Starfire would rush off to find Robin. No. That wasn't something they needed at the moment, especially with Ivy and Harley on the loose. No? First let's try to assess the situation, then we'll try and wake her up, so she won't bolt on us to save Robin. Raven states and Batgirl nods her head in agreement with the violet-haired sorceress. First off, Harley and Ivy got away, so did those other girls, and now the boys are more than likely under Ivy's control. Batgirl lists and Raven frowns for a moment. Speaking of which, Cyborg is normally all but immune to mind control. How's it working on him now? Raven asks the red-haired Dark Angel, and said girl rolls her eyes. Was it psychic mind control before? She asks and Raven slowly nods her head. Figures. Psychics have to be able to break or bend the spirit of a person to control them. Ivy has no such limitation. And before I get into a long explanation about it, her body produces pheromones that make her irresistible to both men and women, and she made a chemical agent that allows her to control men with a kiss. Ivy used chemical mind control rather than psychic, no breaking of will is needed for that. Batgirl explains and Raven blinks before slowly nodding her head. That would explain a few things, but that meant his higher brain functions were being suppressed. We're going to need a way to help them. Raven notes and Batgirl nods her head before both nearly fell over when the ground shook. What was that? Raven wondered and Batgirl frowned. Well, an earthquake might have been normal in some parts of California, it wasn't exactly common around Jump City. I have an idea, but I hope I'm wrong. Batgirl states before making her way over to the door, followed by Raven. The two then come to a stop, and Raven's eyes widen as she sees vines and giant, mutated plants growing out everywhere around the city, the range of which it is happening, startling the girl greatly. Is Ivy doing all this? She wonders and Batgirl gapes. I don't know, she's never managed to make so many this big all at once before. Batgirl says in shock before quickly shaking her head, while Raven frowns deeply. We're going to need some backup. Batgirl notes and Raven nods her head in agreement with the older hero. Who? The Justice League. Raven asks and Batgirl shakes her head. They have other things to deal with. Besides, Robin would kill me if I called them in to save him. He's still got his stubborn pride after all. Batgirl reminds and Raven nods her head, then hears the screams and looks to Batgirl warily. Batman. She offers as plants start attacking the city, and Batgirl gives her a look in response. Right, forget I said anything. Raven mutters before bracing herself on the door, Batgirl doing so, as well as a massive plant twists around the tallest building in Jump City. Growling, Batgirl quickly turns to look at Raven with a no-nonsense expression across her face. Oh, wake up Starfire, we need to head out and find Ivy. Something seriously smells here. Her powers aren't potent enough to mutate this many plants in an area this large in so little time. Batgirl orders and Raven slowly nods her head before quickly rushing to wake her unconscious friend. As she does, Batgirl looks towards the ever-spreading plants warily. Please be safe, Richard. She thinks to herself, before reaching into her belt and pulls out a cell phone. Quickly dialing a number she then holds it up to her ear with a frown, annoyed by the ringing. Come on, pick up. She mumbles to herself, before hearing a click. Car. She questions and hears an affirmative from the other end. Yeah, nice to hear from you too. Look, I'm having some trouble with Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn here in Jump City. Think you can find some backup and get over here how quick? I'd say within the hour. Batgirl asks then replies flatly, and here's a quick reply from the other end. Wait, don't just come over. Remember those friends you told me you met recently? Yeah, them. Think you can bring them along? You can, good. Also, I need you to stop by Gotham. Yes, I know Batman's kind of scary. I just need you to get some things for me from him. No. I don't want the car. Would you stop teasing me about that stupid crush already? I want you to get some antidote for Poison Ivy's kisses. Yes, no. The boys on the Titans team were affected. Thanks, car. I really owe you one this time. Batgirl says to her friend before listening and smiling slightly. Thanks and see you soon. Batgirl then says to her friend before closing the cell phone and returning it to her belt. Tartarus HQ. You did what? Naruto demands of Jinx and the rest of the girls, Gizmo cursing up a storm while trying to figure out what was going on. As far as any of them knew, Jump City was in lockdown. The plants that had spontaneously mutated and grown to monstrous proportions, having nearly blocked all exits or escape routes. Thus when Jinx and the other girls got back, Naruto was on their ass with fury clear by his expression, his eyes nearly red from rage. We kind of fought and beat the Titans and Batgirl. Jinx repeats with a weak grin, and Naruto slaps his face, his mind going back to Harley Quinn in Poison Ivy's Arkham Files. Harley Quinn. Real name: Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Height: 5'7". Weight: 140 pounds. Attributes: total disregard for human life. Status: committed for life. Poison Ivy. Real name: Pamela Lillian Isley. Height: 5'8". Weight: 115 pounds. Attributes: uncanny ability to control plant life. No regard for human life. Status: committed for life. Either way, they were in some pretty deep shit here. So, let me get this straight. Naruto says through gritted teeth while the other Tartarus males, sans Gizmo, are listening in. You guys beat the Titans, let 3 of them become slaves to Ivy, then left the girls at the mercy of 2 complete lunatics with absolutely no regard for human life. Naruto demands angrily, his eyes turning blood red with slits for pupils, every member of Tartarus suddenly cowering, Blackfire barely managing not to shake with fear, as Donnie hides behind her with Willa, both wide-eyed and frightened. Well we thought I mean. Jinx tried to respond while leaning away from the snarling blonde-haired teen. Found it. Gizmo suddenly called out, Naruto snapping his head to the tiny terror. The plants are growing because of some shit in the air. My guess is Ivy's using Jump City as a fucking test run for some new plant concoction of hers. Shit, this is so bad. At this rate the whole city's going to be swallowed whole and then us. Gizmo states with a frown on his face. After all, Harley and Ivy were just visiting. They had to live in Jump City unlike them. What about Raven and the other 2? Naruto questions and Gizmo quickly typed on the computer, the girls breathing sighs of relief. I have never been so afraid of anyone in my life. Donnie says with white eyes behind her mask and Blackfire shudders. I fought flesh-eating aliens, giant robots, alien bounty hunters, and an entire race of extremely pissed-off alien warriors, but that was by far the scariest thing I have ever seen in my life. Blackfire states while standing straight, and Will looks out from behind her with white eyes. I think I wet myself. She mutters in a whimper, and the other girls look to her in disgust. It was a joke. She mumbles, though they aren't sure if she's serious or not while Naruto looks over Gizmo's shoulder. Looks like your girlfriend and the other Titan girls are fine. They seem to be stationed at the museum and are heading outwards. Gizmo states and Naruto breathes a sigh of relief, the girls doing so as well, since Naruto would probably kill them if Raven was hurt. Oh shit. Gizmo then muttered before rapidly typing on the computer, Naruto watching as the prison came up on his screen. What's happening, Giz? The blonde boy questions and Gizmo grits his teeth. Looks like Robobutt is breaking some people out of the prison. Gizmo states with a frown and Naruto blinks. Who? He questions and Gizmo looks at him and grimaces. All of them? He replies and Naruto slaps his face. Killer plants and every low-life scumbag and crazed super criminal in town is loose. Great. How could this get any worse? Naruto demands furiously while rubbing his head, and Gizmo frowns. How about the fact Beast's brain is heading straight for Cinderblock, Overload, and Plasmus's current location? Gizmo offers and Naruto gapes. A second later he punches a wall, a new hole the size of a small crater the result. Damn, someone's pissed. Gizmo mutters to himself while Naruto merely growls. Shit, those 2 psychos are going to trash Jump City, and I like this town. No one hates me here. Well, Robin does, but I don't really care. Besides, I like messing with him. Wait, focus Naruto. Let's see, we've got killer plants, an entire maximum security prison's worth of felons on the loose, more than half of them for crimes that I can't speak of without feeling dirty, and more than half the Titans out of action. Why do you hate me so, Kami-sama? But well, there goes my sleep for the night, and why is it that no matter what I do I always end up playing the hero? Naruto inwardly grumbles before turning on his heel and stalking away. I'm heading into town. I may be a criminal, but Ivy's gone way past the line on this one. Nobody trashes my town, but me. Naruto states darkly while walking into the shadows and heading to his room, Donnie looking to Jinx once he's gone. Think he'll remember to be mad at us when he gets back? She asks and Jinx looks to the way he came and grimaces. Let's put it this way, I hope there's a lot of people for him to beat up before he gets back here. She replies with obvious fear, gaining agreements from the rest of the older Tartarus members as well. Kitten was annoyed, scared, and angry all at the same time. She'd been planning on trying to get a hold of Beast Boy to set up another date when plants started attacking her. Her father was currently locked in his lab, leaving him more or less safe, but she was currently in her pink X suit and fighting her way through a killer batch of vines. What the hell is going on around here? she demanded furiously while flipping over another vine, then expertly dancing around a few more before throwing a shuriken at it, slicing through it and coming to a halt. Breathing a sigh of relief for a moment, she then gaped when the vine grew about 4 more vines from where she cut it. "Oh shit," she called out before lunging out of the way, then jumped onto the side of a building and crawled up the side of it. She could use her father's power to walk on walls if she wanted. She'd actually stolen those magnets to put people off her trail. Also, it was hell for her to do that through her gloves and boots, so the magnets had become necessary to her work as a thief. Flipping up to the top of a building, Kitten turned on her heel and backed away slowly as the vines started to creep towards her. What the hell is going on? She wondered to herself before quickly turning on her heel and bolting, running as fast as she could, even morphing her leg muscles to prime running condition to give herself just a little extra kick. Jumping across a rooftop and landing in a low crouch, the blonde then looked up and gaped at what had happened to Jump City in little under a few hours. The vines and plants had started spreading, fires were being caused here and there, sirens were blaring, people were screaming and shouting out in terror. Pandemonium was taking hold of the city, as people began to randomly attack the many vines or steal whatever they could in the confusion. The sky was turning an inky black color from the combination of late-night darkness, and the rising smoke and ash. The city looked like hell had paid them all a personal visit. Shit. Kitten muttered softly before slowly walking forward and looking down at the devastation that was occurring. This isn't a normal villainous scheme. She mused to herself before firing a grappling hook from her suit at her hand, and then swung on it over to another building. People in orange jumpsuits were also running rampant in the streets. Some had guns, others had whatever they had managed to procure, all of them with tearing through the city as if possessed. Every pickpocket, murderer, arsonist, and rapist in the entire prison must have been let loose for this many to be out. She muttered, then saw an explosion as Dr. Light stomped out of a building, blasting random criminals left and right before jumping into the streets with a heavy-looking bag of loot. Behind him was none other than Mumbo Jumbo, the blue-skinned magician, grinning as he made himself and his new partner disappear into thin air. Shaking her head, Kitten looked down at the scenes below her for only a second before clenching her fists. "It's just like Gotham," a familiar voice to her grumbled, and Kitten turned to see Killer Moth standing behind her, his large humanoid moth-structured body showing his visible anger and unease. "Daddy?" she asked, and the Mothman walked forward and sat beside her. Crime infesting the streets, random psychotic villains attacking the city just to destroy it, super criminals attacking anyone who gets in their way, violence and death everywhere. It's why I didn't want to raise you in Gotham, Killer Moth explained while looking down at Jump City. Looking at her father, Kitten nodded her head. She could see her father's logic in pulling her out of Gotham. If any of the less noble members of Gotham had managed to find out about her shape-shifting ability, she'd have been kidnapped and turned into a prostitute within a few days, weeks if she could mentally resist them. "How do you know it was me?" she questioned, and Killer Moth gave his equivalent of a grin in response, which wasn't much different to normal people, but to her, it was as clear as day. "I raise you, I knew you'd take interest in crime or thieving in some way eventually," he replied with pride and patted her shoulder, Kitten smiling brightly under her mask. However, screams of panic and fear caused her to turn back to the city below and frown deeply. "We can't let this continue," Kitten states, and Killer Moth frowns deeply. "We could just leave." Here mines and then grimaces when the masked eyes of Pink X turned to glare at him. Why did she have to have a mask with eyes that reminded him of someone who scared him to death, the Batman? "Daddy?" Kitten growled out, and Killer Moth shivered. The only thing worse than Batman as far as he was concerned was his daughter pissed and in a supersuit. "Kitten, I know you love it here in Jump City, but I am not taking on Poison Ivy," KM states, and Kitten glares towards her father fiercely, before suddenly blinking and looking at him strangely. "How do you know it's Poison Ivy?" she asks her father, and he gives her a look in response. "Kitten, I lived in Gotham for years before you were born, and I can honestly say that this has Poison Ivy's signature written all over it," Killer Moth states, while waving a hand to the insanity that was happening around them. Frowning inwardly, Kitten debated considering her father's idea, with taking on a known psychopath with nearly no chance of surviving the said encounter. Besides that, she's already gotten control of the Titan boys. Killer Moth then states, and Kitten's eyes bolt open. "What?" she demands, and Killer Moth looks at her. "Their powers aren't her only weapon, Kitten. She's a geneticist like myself, only specializes in plants rather than insects. She's also a chemist and a botanist, and created a special compound that, when combined with her natural pheromones, gives her control of any man she kisses." Killer Moth explained, glad he'd whipped up a counter for that and injected himself years ago. Hey, he was paranoid when Kitten was born, hence his quick retreat from Gotham and its numerous sociopaths. "Damn it," Kitten growled while getting up, her fingers growing sharp claws and her teeth elongating as her fury increased. "I swear to God that I'm going to tear that red-haired plant hussy a new one. No one touches my beastie but me." Kitten roared angrily before firing a grapple and swinging into the city, Killer Moth blinking for a moment, then put two and two together. "She's dating Beast Boy now. Well, at least he's noble unlike her other boyfriends." Wouldn't have to worry too much about him and her shape shifting, either given his own wow the first boy I actually like, and he's a hero I really am crazy. Killer Moth mused with surprise, seeing as he didn't like her normal choices in boyfriends, especially Fang. The spider freak was a criminal, and not afraid of paralyzing people to get what he wanted. And of course that was a risk Killer Moth really didn't want Kitten taking, the boy just had to go. However, given that his daughter was now pissed off beyond belief, Killer Moth slowly got up and then opened his large wings, before he then flew back home. He had some gear to get together if he was going to be protecting Kitten from Ivy. And more than likely Harley as well if any of the rumors he had been hearing were correct. Elsewhere, Naruto was in full Red X gear, however had traded out some of his gear for lighter, or more versatile versions. His helmet for instance was lighter for the sake he'd really need speed this time, thus had no lead lining. His gauntlets were sleek, black, and had 3 long collapsible blades like Batman's, and last. Over his shoulders was a long black trench coat with short sleeves and a slot for his ninjutsu on the back, the coat holding dozens of seals made into it, where he had numerous shuriken, kunai, and other weapons at the ready. Those two have seriously fucked with the wrong city this time. Naruto thinks darkly while checking the amount of equipment stored in his coat. 100 or so explosive notes, check. 200 shuriken, check. 50 kunai, check. 50 Horatian kunai, check. An extra ninjutsu in case his first was destroyed, or he felt like raining death down on someone's head, double check. And last was his X-suit check. Shaking his head and tightening the straps of his gauntlets one last time, Naruto then took a deep breath. Time I got to work. If Harley really wants to laugh, to smile, I'll make her smile, yeah, I'll make her smile alright. I'll carve a fucking smile into her face, and then I'll do the same to Ivy if Kar-chan even has a scratch on her. Naruto inwardly growled out, before he then used his belt and teleported into the city. Landing on top of a building, his eyes bolted open upon seeing the sordid state of his city. Shit. He muttered before shaking his head and then looking around and sighing. Checking the map in his helmet, the blonde-haired thief saw his location, and cross-referenced it with where Raven should be. Damn, I still got a ways to go. He mused while turning around, stopping when he saw Pink X running across rooftops. Well, a little help wouldn't hurt. He mused before moving quickly, lunging in front of the girl, and stopping her by catching her shoulders. Out of my way. She roared and Naruto rolled his eyes. You want Ivy? He asked and Kitten nodded her head. Chill, in case you haven't noticed, any chance of getting to Ivy is close to suicide. Naruto states while nudging his head to the center of the city, a massive plant having spiraled around a building, long thorns growing off of it. Then what the hell do you suggest we do then? Kitten demands and Naruto sighs for a moment. Find the remaining titans. One of them has to have some kind of plan, or at least an idea of what to do next. He states and Kitten takes a second to calm herself, then watches as Naruto walks over to the side of the building. Come on, I've got some pinned-up rage as well, so let's introduce some escapee convicts to misplaced aggression. Naruto offers, while cracking his knuckles menacingly, Kitten grinning like the proverbial Cheshire cat himself. Sounds good to me. She comments before lunging down to the ground, Naruto following after her and lashing out at a criminal with a right hook, sending him flying into a car. As he did, Kitten came down in a dropkick, slamming a man into the ground with her landing on top of him in a crouch. Looking around, she then stood up and quickly spun into a roundhouse kick to another criminal. As she did, Naruto grabbed 2 such convicts and slammed their heads together, then reached into his coat, used a seal, and produced a few explosive notes with very little chakra. Placing them on several convicts, he then flipped to stand beside of Kitten and narrowed his eyes. Boom. He uttered darkly and the notes exploded, knocking the criminal's face first into the ground, while Kitten looked at him in shock. Remind me never to piss you off, she said warily, and Naruto ignored her before making his way down the street. The Titan girls are this way, he states darkly before reaching into his coat once more, pulling out another explosive note. He tossed it at a massive vine in their way. Boom. He muttered once more, causing the vine to explode in front of him, the blonde X-nin merely walking forward, never stopping his forward march. Whoa, he's really not playing around tonight. Kitten mused quietly, completely and truly frightened of this Red X she was seeing tonight, shaking her head. Kitten then followed after the boy, staying behind him as he then reached to his back and pulled his ninjutsu free. Looking before the boy, Kitten saw several vines heading their way. Naruto didn't even stop, he moved in a single slicing motion, the wind arching out and cutting the plants into pieces. Swinging the blade only 2 more times diced the plants up into a pile of refuge. Oh shit. Kitten muttered lowly, wide-eyed as Naruto then twirled the blade in his hand, before silently sheathing it on his back once more. His steps seemed to thunder as he stalked forward, eyes never shifting, set firmly forward. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy should pray to whomever they worship that Raven was safe, because Red X was no longer happy. This time he was truly pissed. Groaning, Robin slowly opens his eyes. Never before was he so glad for him and Batman building up semi-immunity to Poison Ivy's pheromones, or the antibodies for that lipstick of hers. One thing I got to hand him, he's always prepared. Robin says to himself before noticing his hands are tied with chains, as are his ankles, legs, and his upper body. Struggling with his bonds, the boy wonder growls in his throat, and then is shocked when he finds his gloves are missing. Looking for Dee's wonder breath. Harley questions cheekily while holding Robin's Kevlar-plated red vest, lead-tipped cape, the steel-lined gorget from his neck, steel-capped boots, his gloves, and his utility belt. Someone's overly cautious, I see, but why did you take my shoes? The boy wonders suddenly questioned of the woman, and she grinned down at him. Maybe I once taught tickle you to death. Harley offers with an amused smile, and Robin gives her a strange look in response. Highly unlikely, he states, and Harley pouts in response. Come Harl. No need to be rude to the boy. Ivy muses while a vine gently brings her to the ground, the boy wonder growling towards her. Where are Cyborg and Beast Boy? He demands fiercely, and Ivy rolls her eyes. They're a bit busy elsewhere at the moment. Ivy replies casually before walking over to the boy and leaning forward. As for your things, we've learned not to let you or your partner surprise us with hidden gadgets. Ivy states simply while Harley places all of Robin's effects into a box, and then kicks it to the side. Yeah. We're not messing around this time, blunder boy. Harley states, and Robin twitches violently of all times for those two to notice their other gadgets. So what are you going to do with me now? Robin demands with a deep scowl, and Harley looks over to Ivy. Yeah, what are we gonna do with him, Red? She questions her friend, and Ivy takes a thoughtful expression before smiling sinisterly. Let's leave him for my babies. With my new mister in working order, they should be growing faster and faster. Ivy muses, and Robin narrows his eyes. Mister? He questions, and Harley nods her head. Something I was working on before Batman caught me last. I had a prototype stored away and decided to test it out here before I try it out on Gotham. Ivy explains, and Harley suddenly interjects with a wide grin on her face. Yeah, it's a little device Red cooked up. She takes a bunch of her blood, mixes it with some plant mutagens, and a few other things, before using this little all-machine thing to spray a mist into the air, causing it to spread all over DOS City, without her having to bleed out on plants or nothing. Harley explains, and Robin's eyes widen in shock and horror. Thus the city will be overrun by constantly growing and mutating plants, killing hundreds. Robin grits out while glaring at the two through his mask, and Ivy rolls her eyes. Are you humans really any different? Murdering all the helpless, defenseless plants of the world. Ivy retorts, and Robin sneers towards the woman, watching on with ever-rising anger as she turns on her heel. Come on Harley, let's go find a good seat to watch the show from. Ivy says, and Harley nods her head, sticks her tongue out at Robin, then follows after Ivy, laughing as she does so. Later, bird brain. Harley offers with a sway to her steps, while Robin struggles with the chains around his wrists. Damn it. I really wish I'd paid more attention to those escape artists at the circus now. Robin can't help but think to himself as he tries to pry his hands loose from the chains. His city really needed him and the Titans now. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.